in the current administration and the relaxing of regulations by this administration. So I mean, it's just the headlines. I read newspapers and magazines and keep up with the news. Always, because that's what I enjoy. I want to stay current, but also with an eye for what might be a good story.
So on a similar note, the other really topical thing that I noticed in Camino Winds is the subject line of elder abuse and abuse in nursing homes, which obviously is not something you could have known was going to be such a huge issue at the time that the book came out. Was there anything that you uncovered in your research for that plot line that really surprised you?
I knew a fair amount about the nursing home abuse and about the efforts to prolong the lives of people who are almost completely gone. I had a relative years ago who worked in a nursing home, an Alzheimer's unit of a nursing home for low wages. And she would tell stories about the efforts to kind of drag the patient, somebody who's not spoken in years, somebody who does not know, where he or she is, but to kind of drag them to the finish line for one more month to bill Medicare, and cooking the books and cheating here and there to bill more payments to Medicare. I don't know, how widespread that is. I don't pretend to know. The plot line in Camino Winds, where there was actually a drug that would help old people keep their hearts beating for another month or two. That's totally fictional. That's just I just made that up as wildly as I could because I knew nobody was going to believe it. So that's what I get to do sometimes as a writer.
So I'm going to pull a couple of questions from the chat now because we've been getting some great ones there from the audience. We have someone who wants to know, Aiden wants to know more about your legal career and how that legal career influenced your writing life.
Tremendously, because if I had not been a lawyer, I don't know if I would have ever started writing. Writing was not a childhood dream or something I studied in college. I wrote nothing but legal briefs and papers for 10 years as a lawyer. But when I was 30 years old, I saw something very dramatic in a courtroom. And I love courtrooms because people discuss things in open court under oath that they would not discuss anywhere else. They have to, they're witnesses. They're witnesses to a crime or whatever, an accident, and they have to, most of the time they don't want to testify, but they often have to by subpoena because they were there or they know something. And so they have to testify in front of a lot of people, a jury, a judge, lawyers, a courtroom. That's why I love courtrooms. And at the time, again, I was 30 years old, and I was really dreaming of being a big time courtroom lawyer. I had tried a lot of cases. By the time I was 30, I felt comfortable on my feet in a courtroom, and I wanted to be a big-time trial lawyer. That was my dream. I'm not sure I was going to make it, but that's what I was thinking about. And I was hanging around a courtroom one day in my home county, my home courtroom, and I saw this very dramatic event. I was not involved in the case. And it inspired me to sort of create this courtroom drama. In a small town like mine, as seen through the eyes of an idealistic young attorney, and who's struggling to get ahead, young and whatever, and that was me. And so I kind of poured myself into the story, and it eventually became A Time to Kill. And I've often wondered if I had not written A Time to Kill, I would not have written The Firm, and the rest is history, or could have been history. So I've always said, because I was there at that moment, not as a writer, but as a lawyer, I was inspired. And so the legal career, as brief as it was only 10 years, and it was not that prosperous. And I was glad to get away from it because by then I had the bug to write full time, and nothing else is going to make me happy.
That leads well into another question from John Anderson in the chat. How long does it take you to go from an idea you have to the actual book? And is this process different from how it was for A Time to Kill, your first?
Well, the process varies because some ideas hit, like a bolt of lightning, and there it is. And I can see the beginning, the middle, the end. It's just, I've got to write that story. And now I'll still outline and research and, get it ready, tee it up, get it ready to go to make sure the whole thing's going to work. It's not unusual to have a brilliant idea and start working on it and it goes nowhere. You kind of run out of, and so I've learned that be kind of cautious up front. Don't get too enthusiastic with an idea because chances are it's not going to work. Some ideas, I wrote a book called Playing for Pizza about American football in Italy. And I was over there researching a book called The Broker, which is set in Bologna, Italy, and in Washington. And I had, as I always do when I'm off researching, I hire a car and a driver, somebody drive me around. And the guy needs to speak pretty good English. And this guy was a big Italian guy named Luca. And he was very good English. And I said, how'd you pick up your English? And he said, I played football. Well, he's too big to be a soccer player. I said, oh, like soccer? He said, no, real football. He said, there's an American football league here in Italy. And I said, you gotta be kidding. So he took me to practice that day. And this is the Italian football league. There are probably a dozen teams, and each team can have two Americans. It's always the quarterback and always some guy on defense. And those are the rules. The rest of them are these big, tough Italian guys who like to put on pads and beat each other up playing football. And that day, when I saw them practice, I said, this is going to be a novel. I mean, that's how fast it happened for Playing for Pizza. But every story is a little bit different. Some take time, some hit pretty fast.
Thanks.
There's actually, David, if I can interrupt, there's a question that I particularly love that just came in on the chat, which I'd love to ask, because I too have been enjoying through all of these Zoom events studying people's bookshelves. Benjamin asks, you have quite an eclectic book collection on the shelf behind you. Have you ever considered or tried venturing off into supernatural or science fiction or some other genre?
No, I have never been a fan of science fiction. I've tried. My brain, my mind just doesn't work that way. I have no. It's not a math and science brain. It's just I didn't do well in those subjects, and I don't think in terms of fantasy. And I've tried many times. My kids raved over Game of Thrones, and I talked to Pat Conroy not long before he passed away, and he said that he had gone to Santa Fe and done an event with George R.R. Martin, who lives there, and they had this big public event. And he said before he went out there, he and Cassandra's wife, they read all the Game of Thrones books back and forth to each other, chapter by chapter. And those books are real thick, that's a lot of reading. And I remember that story. I thought, there's no way I can do that. So I like a lot of different types of fiction, but not fantasy and science fiction.
Speaking of writers and writing, so we've done a number of these virtual events, and a number of the writers who we've hosted have discussed how difficult it is working during the pandemic. Has self-isolation affected your working habits, routine?
No, I've been in isolation for 30 years. It's a very lonely profession. You do it. I do it in a room by myself every day with nobody around. And my little writing office, not this one. This is an office in downtown Charlottesville where I come every day to work and take care of the business end of things and get away from the farm. Our farm is about 10 miles south of here. And The office is there. The writing office is a small place that's has no phones, no fax, no internet, no music. It's kind of dark and quiet, and I'm there at 7:30, every morning by myself. I've not collaborated yet. I may if I get the right story or right person. So it's kind of a lonely way to work, and it's I wouldn't trade it for anything. The big difference with the pandemic is the inability to travel. I was scheduled to be at 3 or 4 book festivals this spring, and they were all canceled. We had a couple of trips planned, my wife and I. So we're kind of stuck at home. And if I'm stuck at home, I'm going to be writing. So the next book is going to be far thicker than the last book. I can promise you that. A lot more words.
So another great question from the chat comes from Megan. She says that she's always appreciated the elements of social justice in your work, and that's been very inspiring to her. And she asks what suggestions you have for people who want to be engaged in activism.
There is an endless list of organizations that you can join at any level you want to join to work to change laws and to change or to solve so many problems we have in our criminal justice system. There are groups active everywhere, and with a bit of research, you can find a group that you like and jump in because they need help.
There's another question here in the chat from Bill Richardson, who is wondering how much involvement do you have with the films that have been made from your books? And awesome work.
Not much. Not much. I don't make movies. I don't know how to make movies. What we try to do is deal with people who are talented and nice people, and there are a lot of nice people in that crazy business, and sell the rights to them and pretty much turn them loose. Stephen King is a buddy. He told me something 25 years ago. He said, look, when it comes to Hollywood, if you want to deal with Hollywood, do it. We all do, because we all love a good movie, and we all would love to see a good movie made from our book or books. And I'm the same way. He said, don't get all wrapped up in the movie making. Get your money up front, kiss it goodbye, and expect it to be something different. And if you don't like that, don't sell to Hollywood. And that was advice I got really early on. And I've been lucky. I've had 10 movies adapted, 8 feature films, 1 TV movie, Painted House, and a documentary on the Innocent Man that Netflix did last year and did a great job. So I've had 10 of my books adapted, and they've all been enjoyable to watch. I've enjoyed all of them. Most of them are on TV tonight being recycled, and and they're still selling books. So I've never publicly criticized a movie or anybody. That I just if you're gonna play the game and take the money and keep your mouth shut.
It's a different thing. Here's a question from Mike. Do you have any favorites among your mini books?
With the benefit of time, you can look back and say, that was a good effort, and maybe that one was not so good. I like some more than others. Some stick with me. The book I'm writing now is a sequel to A Time to Kill, and it's called A Time for Mercy. And it comes out in October. I'm almost finished with it because I have so much time to write these days. And it's the same cast of characters from A Time to Kill. It's Jake Burdance is back in the courtroom with another big murder case in small town in Mississippi. And the case has really divided the community. And so I spent 2 hours in the courtroom with Jake this morning. So I'm reliving that book in that setting that I first, created 35 years ago. And so A Time to Kill, and this is the second sequel, this is the third Jake book. And so, that book obviously means a lot to me. And people ask me, what's your favorite? I always say, well, the first one, because I didn't know. It's very autobiographical. It's when I'm writing about Jake and Ford County, I'm writing about the area I'm from, and I know the people and the culture, customs, prejudices, history, all that kind of stuff. It comes natural for me, and that's what that's where I really belong. So, Time to Kill, I suppose, will always be my favorite.
One thing that we've been doing often in these virtual events is asking authors to tell us what they've been reading lately and recommend great books. And we've actually gotten some amazing recommendations that way. So have you read anything fantastic lately that you can recommend?
When we first got quarantined, I found it. There were no distractions as far as the writing. But late in the afternoon, when I would sit on the porch with a book, I found myself distracted. I could not really concentrate on a book because of all the bad news and worries and all the stuff we're going through. But I kind of got through that. One book that really got me through it was The Splendid and the Vile by Erik Larson. I love reading about World War II, and this is a terrific book. Really, it's a page turner for a historical work of history. It's the Battle of Britain, the Blitz, from May of 1940 to May of 1941, when Britain was standing alone and France had collapsed. We were not in the war, and it appeared as though we were not going to get in the war. And Germany was pounding London, bombing every night. It's a great story and about Churchill. And what Mr. Larson did was he had access to a lot of diaries. Evidently back then, everybody was writing all night long about everything that was happening. But he got diaries from Churchill's children, his wife, and I think some of that stuff has just now been released, and it was made for a great book. Fiction-wise, I enjoyed James McBride's. He's a favorite writer. Deacon King Kong. It's James is the very best. Yesterday, I got Scott Turow's book, The Last Trial. His latest book came out, I think, last week or 2 weeks before. I'll enjoy that one. What else have I read? I always draw a blank when people ask me, what am I reading? I always draw a blank. So I've got 3 or 4 of them going right now.
That's a great list. Actually, our last event before the quarantine and we shut it all down was part of James McBride's book tour for Deacon King Kong. And it was quite remarkable, and it's a great book. So Thank you for that. I think we're just about out of time, so I'm going to ask one last question, which is, can you give us any hints of what's next for Bruce Cable? Are we going to hear some more from him?
Yes. When I finished Camino Island 3 years ago and came to your store with Jody Picoult. We had a great event at the store in Vermont. And I knew then that I would go back to Camino Island for more stories because I really liked the setting, loved the characters. And so I told Doubleday that I could see at least 2 more books. Camino Winds is the first of 2 more. There'll be a third one in 2 or 3 years. I'm in no hurry. People really want to see more of Mercer Mann, a young novelist who's 30, she's probably 33 or 34 years old and quite a character, struggling to write full time, also teaching. And I'm thinking about making her sort of the star of the 3rd book. Bruce is always going to be around. Bruce, though, is 45. He's slowing down a little bit. He's had the bookstore for 20 years and he's made plenty of money, some legally, some illegally. It's all buried offshore. Only his wife knows about it. So he can play the big game. He can really trade with rare books with the big guys. So he's always going to be around. The local writers are always going to be there. But Mercer's probably going to take charge of the next novel.
I can't wait. These books are a real joy to read, and they seem like they're probably a joy to write also. So thank you for the gift of them.
Listen, they're a lot of fun to write. They're beach books, summer books, they're fun books, they're mysteries, whatever. But booksellers love them because they're about booksellers and bookstores and books and rare books and all that, so they're fun to write, and I hope they're fun to read.
They were a delight to read. Great work. Catnip, someone said. Bookseller catnip.
So that is just about all the time we have. I know you have another of these events to get to. So John, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. This was an immense treat for me. I think an immense treat for everybody.
Thank y'all very much. See you later.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
And folks who are joining us from home, you can tune in tonight to our next Northshire Live with Vermont author Stephen Kiernan. That will be at 5 p.m. and you can find the details in your email if you subscribe to our emails or on our website at northshire.com. Thanks so much everyone for being here.